Hi guys, Musk here, and I've gone back to my normal way of just taking photos for this one. I'm more familiar with the process, so it takes me less effort, and I was feeling somewhat lazy. So tonight we find ourselves in some sort of derelict settlement, maybe in the Knotwoods. These buildings are impassable, blocking, and height whatever seems realistic, similar with this water wheel and boxes. These big patches, I think we just said they're severe. I can't remember if we said they were concealing. I'm just gonna say they were severe because that's really all we use them for, and that's how I normally think of them. In the middle, we've got this patch of lava that counts as hazardous, severe. Oh, we've got a rock that's impassable, blocking. The forests we got a little bit confused about, and so they ended up being severe and dense, but not concealing in this case. Maybe just imagine the trees are really thin and difficult to hide behind. I think in future I'm going to make them concealing as well, but in this game they are not. We're on standard deployment, and I'm looking at this. I'm hoping I haven't deployed too far up, because I've just noticed this line here. Hopefully that is okay within the zone, and it seems equal to what my opponent's done anyway. And the strategy is stuff the ballots, represented by these golden markers dotted around the map. The Apex crew won the flip and decided they would be the attacker, and so I got my opponent to deploy the group of his crew containing Lord Cooper first, as generally the Master is the key piece in any crew, and so generally its position tells you the most about their game plan or the shape of the crew's deployment. And against Lord Cooper it's doubly important because it tells me where that monstrous gun is going to be. So let's start with my opponent's crew. From the left we have got Artemis, Ula, a Vatagi Huntsman, Lord Cooper, Model 9, a Crypsis Core with Hidden Agenda, and another Vatagi Huntsman. And then he's got his totems, what are they called, Runaways, deployed here on the centre line. For the Neverborn we have Vasilisa, Wicked Doll, Kastore Awakened with Ancient Pact, Barbarous, Athorak, Marathene with Inhuman Reflexes, and a Cavern Nephilim. So, why have I chosen this crew and what am I trying to do with it? There's a few things going on. Firstly, I'm using Kastore Awakened because I don't really understand the model. My idea is I'm going to use Kastore Fervent mostly to relearn the game, build muscle memory up with that guy. As he's simple, the game plan is pretty obvious, and he seems pretty strong, so I think that's a good way to relearn how to play Malifaux. But I have sat down with Kastore Awakened's card and tried to figure him out on paper, and I've put down my initial thoughts in a thread on the Weird forum. And really, as with last game, I just wanted to get a couple of games in with him to put those theories to the test, and at least have some concept of how he plays before I sort of dig my heels into Kastore Fervent. So basically, I'm bringing Awakened in this case, regardless of anything else. It's not to do with the strategy or the any information my opponent has declared. I'm also deliberately choosing not to take an Urnbearer this game. I think the Urnbearer is basically a mandatory model in Kastore, as it's such a powerful and efficient model for its cost, and the Empty the Urn's ability is really a massive part of the engine that drives the Returned crew. I'm starting to feel that playing Returned is like this mini-game of managing health as a currency. Different models trade it back and forth between each other with faith in flesh to get effects that in this quite support-heavy crew overall makes the whole greater than sort of the sum of its individual parts. And that's all fine in terms of like trading the existing health, but your enemy is going to be constantly chipping away at that bank, as it were. And so your own models being able to create that resource by healing straight up fuels that economy. And the Urnbearer does that really efficiently by passively generating shields that she then turns into a massive dump of like 4 health, with a little bonus focus as a cherry on top, as well as any little pips of healing you get off her aura. So she's great, but there are times when it's a bit of a struggle to fit in all the tech pieces you need, although there might be certain circumstances that she's quite weak into, and I think this matchup is a pretty good example of such a circumstance. Basically, she's a large base, so she's quite difficult to conceal well, and she wants to be sort of central around the crew. She's super important, and Lord Cooper can one-shot her. So my fear was I'd be taking my 6-stone investment of Urnbearer and basically just losing her on the first turn, or else struggling to protect her enough whilst also getting the value I need out of her. So I wanted to use this as an opportunity to test how bad do I need the Urnbearer. Can I do without her? So the next idea shaping my crew is the matchup. So from looking through the Apex cards, I think they're a pretty scary crew. I mean, I actually really like what they can do, or how their models seem to fit together. It seems really strong, and I'm a bit jealous of all the tools you can sort of put into a crew. But I've identified what I think are their weaknesses, and I wanted to try to put that to the test as well this game. And my crew is comprised of models that I think will counter what Lord Cooper and his crew will want to do, rather than built specifically for the scheme pool. And what I identify as the weaknesses of Apex, released Apex with led by Lord Cooper 1, is considerable reliance on Lord Cooper's gun. It's a massive threat, it's super scary, and it's quite clear that he's geared towards removing a model or two per turn. And so if facing him, it's imperative to try to waste his AP as much as possible to prevent him doing that. Additionally, I noticed, the Apex crew deals some decent damage. They've got some good triggers, and so Cooper, for example, can ignore demise abilities. That means no Serena Bowman, because she will just get one shot, not be able to be as tanky as she is intended to be, and a complete waste of stones. But as far as I can see, they don't have any tools really to ignore armor. So I want a crew that incorporates hard to hit from range and armor if I can, which is Neverborn aren't really known for their armor, but I think we've got some good options that can work in this case. So first up, Atharak is coming in the team. I love Atharak. I will try to take him in every game I possibly can anyway, because he is such a good model. But he is the absolute bane of Lord Cooper, because he can put up his ward stones and block any non-melee attack from drawing line of sight to my most valuable models, which will be clustered together in the main body of my crew, which has obviously got to be Atharak himself. It will be Kastore, and Kastore Awakened I see as a bit of a jack of all trades, but ultimately more of a support master. He needs a front line to hide behind, because he needs to try to keep his health up, as that is the best way for augmenting the crew's damage via pulsing damage out through Marathene. And so he needs a bodyguard, and Barbaros is the best in keyword bodyguard we've got. He's a decent beater, he's a pretty darn good tank, and for cost and synergy, I think he's about the best the Returned can get. He also has a pip of armor, so my hope is that I can try to get as many of the Apex models as possible to be hitting Barbaros instead of Kastore, and he'll be tanking away and trying to soak as many of their resources as possible before going down. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to fit everybody behind those wall stones. I'm going to need some flanking models, and Neverborn have excellent access to models with stealth, which prevents anyone from being able to shoot at them or target them from outside of 6 inches. The Return's in keyword premier scheme runner is the Cavern Nephilim, so I'm taking one of those, and I'm quickly learning that these guys can contest a flank pretty savagely on their own. So he's going to be off on one flank, and then the other flank will be my puppets. So for one thing, Wicked Dolls also have stealth, hard to target, and you know who goes really well with Wicked Dolls? Vasilisa, who moves them faster, and also happens to have armor too, and a heal, and good defenses. So while she's not a henchman anymore, boo-hoo, oh I really miss those days. Even if Cooper does manage to draw bead on her, she's not going to be the easiest to put down. Additionally, there's also the staggered synergy. The Wicked Dolls could do it on their attacks, which they're probably not likely to hit, but they will passively do it at the beginning of each turn to anyone they're engaged with because of Vasilisa's ability, and Kastore can also put out staggered with his dominate. And when puppets are hitting staggered victims, they become a whole lot more scarier, able to ignore negatives on their hit and damage effects, and Vasilisa can also get triggers to do more damage, to up her damage track. And one of the key strengths I think I see in Apex is their ability to move models around, particularly with their dogs, Artemis and Ula. They have absolutely fantastic repositioning, and my understanding is a key tactic against Cooper is you want to get into engagement with him, because one of his abilities prevents him from trying to disengage, but I think one of the dogs, can't remember which one it is, can pull him out of combat. But if you stagger him, he can't get away. There's no way anyone else can help him get out, and he can't get himself out of that engagement, other than using his AP to kill whatever is engaging him. which if it's a 3-stone Wicked Doll, I'm happy that you're spending your Master's AP to take that down rather than something more important. And good though that machete is, it's not as impactful as his gun. So if I can divert one of the little Wicked Dolls over to try to gum up Cooper, I will, and look for that opportunity. So with this crew picked out, I had a couple of stones left for upgrades. I stuck Inhuman Reflexes on Marathine. I don't know if it's quite as important to do this in Kastore Awakened as it is in Fervent, but I still reckon it's pretty important, because I think a large part of Kastore Awakened's game plan is positioning Marathine to be able to pulse damage off to multiple models, and adding in little pips of damage from being able to charge through models is pretty good, but also the dodge or move if the enemy cheats within a range around Marathine, it just helps reposition that sort of damage pulsing node. Couple that with the fact that I'm pretty sure, I was pretty sure Cooper was going to bring Model 9, because damn, I would like to have that model in faction. I would love to have that model, it's so good. Yeah, so I don't really have any tools for getting through armor. Neverborn really rely on Serena Bowman for that. As I've said, I can't take her because of Cooper and what he can do to her. And the next best thing as I see it is just little clips of 1 damage from Black Blood, from Insatiable Pulses, and stuff like just a ping of damage from Charge Through, or Blade Rush, or whatever it's called. The thing that does 1 damage whenever you charge through something. So that's sort of my plan to deal with Model 9, is just death by 1,000 cutscene. And then as Kastore Awakened, I'm not really planning on charging him all that much, so I didn't give him the same upgrade. I went for the one that gives me extra initiative, because I reckon winning initiative in order to beat Cooper to the punch and use Athorak to set up ward stones at the top of each turn will be pretty important. And also it's nice just to be able to not Black Joker and Master AP. So that's my thinking behind the crew. As I said, it's designed to counter what I think Cooper wants to do, and this is a test run to see if I'm right. In terms of how I'm going to approach the strategy, I aim to split my crew into 3 groups and contest 3 of the centerline ballot tokens. The Nephilim in the center are going to push up towards Cooper, using ward stones as cover to close the gap, whilst Marathine rushes ahead and tries to position to pulse damage onto the enemies to soften them up. Puppet's going to go down one flank, the Cavern Nephilim the other, and I'm hoping either the Puppets or the Nephilim will crush their lane and be able to send reinforcements over to the other and help us shatter the Apex line. For schemes, I chose Ensnare because I think that is Kastore Awakened's easiest scheme. He can himself score it in 1 activation. He's also got Final Preparations to help out with extra dropping at the end of the turn. The Cavern Nephilim's got pushes to disengage from combat on its attack, and other little kind of movement tricks to enable to place markers. And the Wicked Doll's AP is best used for schemes rather than attacking anyway, so I think I've got quite a lot of options for Ensnare. I toyed with Deliver a Message because it's such an easy one to score, that first point, but I don't like that second point where it sort of conflicts with, like, you want to kill the enemy master if you possibly can. And I took it last game, so I decided not to in this case. And then I was torn with Espionage. I think it would have been okay, but I didn't really want to have someone popping behind to drop a scheme marker, either in the first turn or try to somehow get back there in a later turn. The Wicked Dolls could have done it, but I figured as my team was kind of spread out in 3 groups, protected territory, I wanted to have another go at, and I felt it would work, so I went with that. So I'm going to be dropping lots of markers and interacting a lot, which Kastore won. If there's one thing he has an advantage at over Kastore Fervent, it's the number of interact AP he can generate. And fair warning for what's to come, I misread how you score Ensnare at the start of this game. So I think throughout this game that you score it, you can only score it on minions, where actually it is only scored on non-minions. So we'll see how that goes for me anyway. We're going to turn 1, there's my hand, and I think I get the opportunity to activate first, and I go first with Athorak, and set up my ward stones thusly. And even if Cooper does somehow manage to get all the way over to be able to draw beads to Athorak from over here, I'm hoping I'll have the benefit of cover, which I don't, as it turns out, because Cooper ignores that, but that was the idea anyway. So yeah, I wasn't actually sure whether going first was important. The way I read Cooper's card was that he seems to like to get some setup first, either by being moved to a position or having someone else do something to focus him. I don't really know the crew that well, but it seemed like ideally he wants an activation or so in first to set him up. But I couldn't be sure that he wouldn't just start shooting at me. I don't know his range amazingly well offhand. I think now, having played the game, it's something like 14 inches, but I wasn't completely sure of this going in, so I thought safest option was to activate first with Atharak, get those ward stones down before Cooper has a chance to do anything to me. So now the shields are up, we can sit back and relax a little bit. I can't remember the exact sequence of activations, but essentially my opponent moves up with his Vitagi Huntsman, puts down a trap, and I'm just using pass tokens now just to try to draw out as many activations before committing my models to various locations. Model 9 has moved around behind this building, hiding away. Really good tactic, actually. If you've got a piece of terrain and you've got a model, I mean, I guess it could be anything. I was going to say like a threatening model, but it can be anything. And just pop it behind a building that's out of your opponent's line of sight, you know, like in terms of like the player's line of sight. And maybe against a good player that's not going to work, but it can sometimes be tricky to remember exactly where all the models are if you just can't see them. And I did catch myself forgetting that Model 9 was there a few times, and I did sort of like bump it up my priority list to keep checking as this turn and next sort of went on. And so as the turn progresses and I'm just passing my activations, my opponent's moving up his other Vitagi Huntsman and his Crypsis Core. There's a pit trap that the Crypsis Core is sort of like amplifying the radius of around it. And then the Neverborn starts to go, so I'm moving with Barbarous, and I think I try to... There's one of his little totem runaways. I don't think I'm going to have many options for doing much damage to his crew this turn, but I can certainly try to get rid of some of his activations and some of these annoying little free models. So the idea is I'm going to move up with Barbaros and try to use his Bring It ability to like pull it close to my crew, and I want to just sort of like hit it with just like ping it with some sort of damage, and the goal is to kill it with Marathene. So I figure a charge through it for 1 damage should probably hit it for 2 damage, and then heal Kastore, which we should do like an insatiable ping to kill it for 4. Marathene will get adversary, and I don't care. It doesn't quite work out. Barbarous fails the Bring It duel. The runaway's having none of it. So instead I use the Cavern Nephilim. I have to, because this isn't concealing terrain, I have to drop a card to like get its little push up to around here. It then echolocates onto the runaway, does a little bit of damage, and then charges into the Vitagi Huntsman, doing quite a lot more damage. Setting myself up to clear out this flank and be able to cast some votes next turn. And then Marathene moves up, charges it, and kills the runaway, getting the adversary condition from Cooper, or however that works. Yep. So this adversary condition can't be removed until I leave Cooper's line of sight, or end a turn out of Cooper's line of sight. Perfectly fine if he wants to shoot at Marathene. So you can see this runaway has slipped through my lines and is heading for the table corner, just ready to act as a card draw battery for Cooper should he need it. And really now we're playing a waiting game on this flank, where I don't want to commit until he started to move these dogs, and presumably he's doing the same for my puppets. So eventually I sort of start to run out of activations, I can't wait no longer, so I end up going, and I make a mistake here. So I go with Vasilisa, moving up one of my Wicked Dolls with her, and all we're doing is just moving up the board, getting next to this strategy marker, and the idea was that the Wicked Doll she brought with her would then, I don't know what, move up, drop it, or just drop a scheme marker and I don't know, do something, move up over here or something, make some more space. But as soon as I moved Vasilisa up, Artemis then activated, just walked up and chomped down on this delicious looking dog chew that this kind puppet lady was bringing towards him, and killed my Wicked Doll. So I then moved my other Wicked Doll up, did his little teleport thing to Vasilisa, and tried to hit Artemis. I don't think he hit him. But yeah, so I lost a Wicked Doll for absolutely no reason. If I'd moved the first Wicked Doll up on its own, it would have benefited from Vasilisa's Warp Aura to be able to get a little bit further up, but probably wouldn't have been an easy range for the dogs to come and eat it. And if they had, then I've got Vasilisa and a Wicked Doll ready to deal with them. So yeah, instead, just moving them up like this before these had activated was just a big mistake. I was just easily going to lose that Wicked Doll, and it could have been the case that on this first turn I just move Vasilisa up anyway alone and have the Wicked Dolls hanging back, because this game showed me how, you know, they're 3-stone models, amazing little cheap scheme runners, but you've got to keep them out of combat until they've done their stuff, because in combat they're just dead. So I like the idea of maybe hanging them back and having sort of like a node model like Vasilisa go in, engage things up with a 0 engagement range, and act as sort of like a frontline wall for them, and then once that's set up, then they can sort of teleport in and do their thing, which is basically to interact or drop a scheme marker, that sort of thing. So this is what things look like at the end of the turn. Kastore's just moved up quite centrally. I'm going to try to think what I was doing here. So I know I was thinking about walking him around over to hide behind this this wheel, but then I worried that would be pulling him a little bit too much out of the center. And I think what I was trying to do, and I can't see that he's in range, but what I might have been trying to do was move him up into range to try to dominate this huntsman, to pull him towards me. And the idea would be, like, I'd want to walk him up to within 3 inches of this marker, close to, you know, where we can sort of like easily attacking him, kill him, and then if I get an opportunity at the top of next turn to, I don't know, push Marathon, drop another scheme marker, and get ensnare set up. As I said, like, I thought I had to do it on minions. This would not have worked, as it turns out. But I think that's what my thinking was by moving him up here. And then I've just used one of his AP to focus. In case I do not get the first activation next turn, I at least want to be able to give him the best chance of taking one of Cooper's shots. And that's also sort of my thinking with Atharak here, who's also focused. Not quite sure. I think Ula's just focused and like waddled a little bit around this hopeful prospect. Not sure what he did. I think he's also focused. The Apex crew are trying not, I think, to get too close to me before they've really managed to put some shots into me. So they're playing a bit cagey. And then Cooper has sort of like walked over and managed to draw a line of a bead on Atharak, who he has quickly identified as a major problem for him, and takes a shot at Atharak. I find out that he ignores this cover, and I think he hits Atharak. I think he does like a moderate damage, but I Soulstone, and it looks like I might flip the red Joker for the heal. So he either does no damage to Atharak or very little damage, which is pretty lucky. I should in future try to be extra careful with my placement. Even if I've just moved this back a tiny little bit, that would have been enough to completely save this shot from going through. And I was never really going to be placing any models sort of there anyway, so yeah, just need to be a little bit more careful with absolutely making sure I can block these lines with my wardstones. And I believe we've got another runaway up lurking behind this building here that you can't see, and I forgot about for most of the next turn as well. So going into turn 2, I think I soulstoned for cards, and I think that was a terrible idea. I had some sort of like low, weak cards, and I thought turn 2 is generally one of the most important turns of the game. I wanted to try to bolster my hand as much as I could, and I just drew 2 sort of moderates. It's just not worth a stone. And I think this is a sort of interesting thing I've been noticing of the last couple, the 3 games I've played. Back when I was playing in M3E, I used to stone a lot for cards, and now I'm not so sure that that's really the best investment or like a worthwhile investment or at least as much as I used to think it was. So my thinking now is that, okay, let's say you draw a bad hand of cards, that can change the way you play the turn, right? Like, I don't have to, if I draw a bad hand, that could mean I just don't play as aggressive, try to focus on scheming and positioning, and rely less on, like, not base my turn around making sure I get that big hit in, because it's, you know, not likely to happen, and rely on the idea that if I've got, you know, 6 bad cards in hand, you know, or a decent number of bad cards, they're not in my deck, which means that I'm probably slightly more likely than not to be flipping decent cards, which means my opponent's slightly more likely than not having to cheat first, and it sort of like creates more of a hand pressure on my opponent, very slightly, which changing the way I play can also slightly influence, and then I've got cards to just dump for enemy effects, or if they make it through the end to the end of the turn, I dump the, you know, those lesser cards out of my hand, and then my deck is more stacked in the next turn. Whereas what I really need, particularly in Returned, is damage prevention, because at the moment I'm not very good at the game. So I position my models where they're going to be in the firing line a bit, so damage prevention is just generally good, but also health is a currency in my crew. The less damage I take, the more I have to play with to get you know, extra abilities, extra effects off. And Kastore also tends to take some pretty important and numerous henchmen. The point is, Soul Stones can help prevent damage to my crew, which is even more useful to the Return than it is in most other crew. And also things like Kastore's Dominate attack have some really important triggers that are probably worth using a stone for those sort of like big attacks. So yeah, certainly in this case I think the Soul Stone was wasted, and I think in general I want to be more careful about when I stone. As it transpires, Kastore's little ability to, or upgrade ability to give me a pick of extra initiative wins me that all-important first activation, and surprise surprise I go with Atharak, who my opponent keeps using Cooper's ability, where is he, there he is, to put adversary on each turn. Very sensible. And so Atharak walks up, casts his vote on the marker, and drops his ward stones down to protect himself and his chums. As I've said before in other videos, do not listen to the internet and the people who say Atharak is garbage, why take him, who is Atharak? You know, they are probably much better players than I am, but they are so wrong. This guy is fucking amazing, and I hope you're starting to see what a hard time he is for Cooper in particular. But any crew that relies on some sort of ranged ability in general. So, what have we got going on here? Let's turn our attention to the right flank, where the Cavern Nephilim has been slugging it out with the Hunters, and I believe they might have accidentally killed the Vitagi Huntsman on the Black Blood of the Cavern Nephilim. Either that or he killed her the old-fashioned way, I can't remember, but in any case, he has taken a bit of damage, activated to regen it back up, shifted himself around and placed his vote on the strategy marker, and taken a whole shit ton of hazardous and injured for his troubles thanks to the Crypsis Core extending the range of that pit trap effect. So I think he probably took more damage from this than he should have, given that his movement, any of his moves, ignore terrain. Presumably means he wouldn't suffer damage from the hazardous effect, and only from when he interacts or attacks within that range. But in any case, he's not doing too badly, probably like around half health. And although Model 9 is lurking behind this building and still hasn't activated, I think he's got quite a difficult choice in that, like, he could go over here and kill my really low defense Cavern Nephilim, but then he's giving up a turn. It'll take him a turn to reposition back towards the center. I mean, I know he's super fast. I know he can probably like walk and charge and teleport and whatever else, but it's still going to take him more of his a turn of AP to go from over here killing this Nephilim to then getting back into the center. And if he doesn't do that, then I'm pretty happy my Cavern Nephilim is going to clean up this flank. And I'm fairly happy this Crypsis guy hasn't got the movement abilities to get around me and contest me on this ballot box. As a note, by the way, both of us are aware that the idea that you can put votes on your markers in your deployment zone to make it harder for the enemy to break through and start scoring points on them. But you can't take the interact action on the first turn, presumably for this sort of like to make that a little bit harder, and so neither of us wanted to commit the resources that would have required on this turn. And looking at our crews, at least we both have options to do it, but that will take key pieces away from areas that are going to be hotly contested. Like Model 9 could break through my lines and go do these ones, but then he's really needed to deal with my centre. And similarly, the Nephilim could sort of break through and try to get over to this marker, or more realistically, Vasilisa and her puppets, one of them can break through to get to this one, but that would occur later on in the game. I don't know, I think it's a valid question to consider if it's really that worth it, and I think in this case, I personally think we both made the right call in that regard, but we'll see, I guess. So over on the left flank, the dogs are gone and killed my other puppet. Artemis has chewed up my other puppet, super sad times, and just jogged over to get closer to this strategy marker. He has been staggered because he was engaged by my puppets last turn, which means that Vasilisa probably started to make life a little bit uncomfortable for him. Quite importantly, Cooper at some point activates. I think it might be. Cooper at some point activates and unloads into Vasilisa. He can't target anyone in my centre because of these nice ward stones that seem to have popped up. So Vasilisa is his only real target, and would be a really pretty important kill if he could get it, because that would win him this flank, which then basically opens up my backfield and at least equalises the balance of power as to sort of in compared to what's happening on the right flank. So Cooper shoots at Vasilisa, and the armor 2 with the decent defensive stats means that I think he ends up doing like 4 damage to her in the end. And then she activates, does a little bit of damage back to the dog, and heals herself with a tactical action, so she can target herself, with the trigger to do bonus healing, and I think heals 5, so she just heals herself straight back up to full after taking all of Cooper's AP. Pretty soul destroying for my opponent, and showcasing quite nicely the struggles Cooper could have against heavy armor. Over here in the center, I'm doing my best to lose myself the game by really fucking these activations up. So I've gone with Kastore. I've walked him up to be able and I've walked him up and pushed Marathene over to drop a scheme marker nearby where the Vitagi dude was, and then tried to dominate him using 2 stones. So I stoned for a mask, because my theory of how Kastore Awakened works is that he wants to dominate someone with the crow trigger to move into him, to heal himself and anyone else around him, which is great because, you know, that's adding to my team's health economy. I get potentially a ping of damage from around where Marathene is for that. Then my opponent is at -2 to their walk, which means that his Devour is much more likely to hit, and then I can really make it really likely that I'm going to get that big heal on my master. And that's all good. So what I'm trying to do here is sort of pull off that combo and pull the Huntsman into range to be able to score the Ensnare when he activates, forgetting of course that he's a minion and I can't actually score that on him. But the Crow trigger only pulls 4 inches, and that's a problem because that's just quite a short range on an 8-inch ability, given how close he needs to end up for me to get any sort of benefit off the trigger. And so I figure it's not really versatile enough, and so I stone for a mask for the Dominate, or the, what is it, Ensorcel or Enthrall, I think it is, trigger. Just so I can get a bit of extra movement, a bit of extra flexibility where I can put this guy. And I failed the first time, and I tried it again, and I failed the second time, pretty sure. So I've just used basically 3 of my Master's AP. It's 1 to like get here, but like 2 attacks, 2 stones to absolutely fail to do anything at all to a bloody like 5-stone minion. It was pretty oof. So then Barbarous uses his activation to walk up, and this time gets the Bring It on the guy. So he pulls the guy towards him through the hazardous terrain. Great, still doing damage on him, and he then fails to hit Barbarous. Great. But I've accidentally pulled him too far away from the marker I dropped with Marathene, so I wouldn't be able to score Ensnare off this guy. And like, looking at him in the center, this is sort of my main Ensnare sort of like team, right? I've got the most sort of AP between them, and Marathene's around this area. This is where I'm most likely to score the AP, score the scheme. And in my mind, this guy is my only target, right? Like, I can't target the Hopeful Prospect because he's insignificant, and I can't use Lord Cooper because he's, you know, master. So I really don't want to kill this guy before he activates, before I can get my scheme markers in place. And I'm now all out of AP for that, and in danger of killing him, and so making it really hard for me in future turns. Really, I should have gone first with Barbarous to try to get the Bring It On him, to bring him closer to Kastore, who could then use his Dominate Devour combo and get more out of his AP. So to help me feel slightly better about my Damassery, Marathine then moves and charges Hopeful Prospect, charging through both Hopeful Prospect and Cooper, and then Red Joker's the damage flip to kill the Hopeful Prospect, which was rather appreciated. Good sword. Model 9 makes his move on Kastore and does a decent amount of damage, I think. It wasn't too bad, but I'd really rather he hadn't. The Fataki Huntsman makes what I thought was quite an interesting and confusing move. I didn't know why he was doing this, but he made sure he disengaged from Barbarous and got himself, you know, taking some damage from this hazardous ground. And so I thought he would go and try to like contest my claim on the strategy marker once he... Oh, so he couldn't have done that. So the Fataki Huntsman goes and made a move that confused me a little bit. So I thought he would try to get this, get some strategy points on the marker, but to be fair, he couldn't have done that because he was engaged by Barbarous, and if he disengaged, then he can't interact. So a bit tough for him to wangle that. But he does disengage from Barbarous and gets over to stand by what's his name, Model 9, which enables him to draw a card from one of his abilities. My opponent had run out of cards by this point, and it turns out he desperately needed a card to be able to teleport Eula from his position in the backfield over to Artemis outside of Vasilisa's engagement range, and then basically Eula just dropped 2 markers, 2 votes into the ballot box to heavily secure that marker for the Apex team. So at the end of the turn, things look like this. I think the only other thing I haven't described is this. Well, one of the runaways is right now on the corner, waiting for his opportunity to escape, and the other runaway is bravely charged toward Atharak, actually doing some damage to him if I remember. It might even have been a severe for 4 damage, and basically just trying to gum him up, set him up for Cooper if possible, whenever the opportunity arises. Here we are, my hand going to turn 3. I do have a 6th card just tucked behind this one. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't good. Let's just put it that way. So I'm relying on my 12 crows this turn. I think I've got 1 soul stone left at this point, or I might have used it to try to prevent damage on Atharak in this turn. I can't remember. But either way, I either have only 1 left, or I have none, and they're all dedicated to keeping Atharak alive. So no stony cards for me. So I didn't use any of my pass tokens last turn, so I get a butt ton of like 3 or 4 extra pips to my initiative flip. My opponent really tried, but couldn't beat me for the initiative. So Atharak goes, puts down his ward stones in the same place, just to keep my centre still safe from Cooper, and then just tries to like swat away this pesky little runaway with his ancient words. You know, this ancient Nephilim shrieking these deadly curses at this fucking 0-cost dung-covered beggar man, and it just doesn't affect him in the slightest. Doesn't hurt him. Doesn't do fuck all, which is really annoying because I would have really quite liked to have like staked another little claim on my on the central objective, or moved him over somewhere a bit more useful. As it is, I'm stuck here. So Cooper's getting a bit sick of this, and he decides to put away his rifle, draw his machete, and get stuck in. I was a bit surprised my opponent did this. To me, Cooper wants to avoid this scenario at all costs, but as my opponent rightly said, Atharak was stopping Cooper from doing what he needed to do anyway, so he had to try to use him somehow, And although he could have kept trying to pour shots into Vasilisa, and maybe between him and Artemis, they might have been able to take her down, but with armor 2 and self-healing, it would have taken a lot of resources, and it might not have worked, but like it would have improved his chance of winning that flank. But he would almost certainly lose the battle for the center, which is usually what decides the game, especially if a big fight like this is breaking out in turn 3. So actually, considering his options, I sort of agree. I think he had to do something like this. Maybe coming over to this side would have... If if Atharak is the big problem, Atharak is hurt, and he might have been able to do something to Atharak here and sort of like sort that problem out. As it is, he went this side, and Barbarous hit the Vatagi huntsman with the push aside trigger, pushed him back, followed him up, taking some damage from, I think, going over the hazardous terrain, which caused black blood, which then black blooded onto all 3 of them, killing the Vatagi huntsman. And at this point I'm thinking, oh my god, I've killed him by accident. I'm never going to score this freaking ensnare scheme. But this is a pretty perfect, in a vacuum, pretty perfect Barbarous activation, where he then just starts beating on Cooper, just whittling him down a bit, and then blood for bloods for good measure. Barbarous did pretty good work this activation. And it might have been that before this, Cooper took a shot at Atharak, and this might be where I would have used my focus to stop it. I'm not sure. At some point, Atharak went down really low. I used my last Soul Stone to prevent some of the damage, and basically he was hanging on by a thread, but I can't remember the order of activation. So over on this flank, Vasilisa kills Artemis with a massive attack. I think it was really disheartening for my opponent. I think I hit him with a 13 of rams. He was already staggered from her ability, and then just like top deck to severe as well. Doesn't matter that Eula's here giving him heart wounds because he's staggered. I ignore it. It was just a perfect storm of Vasilisa just smashed him, dead, and dropped a ski marker, and did some healing to like make sure she was never ever going to die. But at least I can't contest his strategy marker, I guess. So back in the center, Kastore activates, and I think when Barbarous activated, he used his Brood Fighter ability to just nudge Kastore out of Model 9's engagement. I don't think we did a disengage flip for that, and I think we should have. So that is my bad there, I think. But in any case, Kastore just walks over to the strategy marker, puts an extra claim on it to just to make extra sure I've secured it, and then charges through the hazardous ground to over to Cooper, trying to hit him with the Devour. And honestly, I can't remember if I even hit him. If I did, it didn't end up doing much damage, but I think I just didn't. I think he just missed. My memory of this game is basically every activation Kastore took was a near total flub. And I used my bonus action to pull Marathene back a bit closer and drop a ski mark. I figure one of these things is gonna be useful at some point. So now it comes to me trying to figure out how on earth to score this ensnare strategy scheme on my opponent's lone remaining minion, which I can't do, but I don't know that. So my Cavern Nephilim drops a ski marker, takes some damage from the trap, and then flutters over to the other side of the boxes to be within 8 inches of Kastore. The plan is, you will find out. Meanwhile, Eula the doggo has decided to give up on the left flank, leave Vasilisa to it, and teleports by your side to Lord Cooper. Because he's a faithful pooch, I guess. Probably no other reason. But no, there was a reason. He delivered a message. And what an absolutely golden model for this scheme. And I think if it's in the pool, I'm going to expect Lord Cooper to take it every time, because for one thing, Lord Cooper shouldn't be the easiest model in the world to engage. because he should be behind the rest of his team. He will be shooting at your models and might just pick the right one to just wipe off the board. And Ula can just sit back, safe and pretty, until something engages a master and just teleport in and instantly do it. What a strong scheme for Apex. So then Model 9 shows why I'm so jealous of him, in that I can't remember exactly what he does, but he charges through both Barbarous and Kastore, negating Barbarous's cage fighter ability, or whatever it's called. So I've got Barbarous in my team specifically to sit near Kastore and make models attack him instead of Kastore. Model 9, as I understand it, can charge out of combat. You can charge even when engaged, and charge is a general action, not an attack action, as far as I understand. So it's perfectly fine for him to charge off, not care about Barbarous, and once he's finished his charge, he's not in Barbarous's engagement anymore. He can take his attack action perfectly happily against Kastore, and that's what he does. And he hurts a bit. He hurts a bit. Luckily, I've got plenty of shit cards to dump to prevent myself from being executed. So he does it again, just back and forth through my guys, pinging them for damage, just as I do with Marathine. Taste of my own medicine, and puts a bit more damage on Barbarous as well. So, at the end of the turn, Neverborn score for Stuff the Ballots. Apex do not, because they've only got one. Let me back up to a picture where we can sort of see the board. So we score Stuff the Ballots. Apex don't, because they only have one still. I use my Final Preparations ability to drop a scheme marker with my Nephilim, taking 2 damage. Ready for as soon as this guy activates next turn to score my points. Apex score Deliver a Message. I score Protected Territory from removing some of these markers that I've dropped, and Vassalisa's marker. And I honestly can't remember if my opponent scored Make Them Bleed this turn. It would be the Cavern Nephilim and Barbarous. The Cavern Nephilim is probably below half health, especially after this shenanigan. I don't know about Barbarous, he might be. We'll say he does score it this turn, in case I forget to mention it later, but it's either this turn or the next that he scores it. So we go into turn 4, there's my hand. I've got no Soul Stones left now, for sure. The back Joker continues to visit me. And I think, despite the fact that past tokens are evening out now, Kastore's upgrade helps me to get the first activation once again. I'm pretty sure I go with Kastore. I'm pretty sure I try to kill Eula, and just completely whiff. Absolutely flub. I tried to devour him 3 times. I don't know, I hit one of them. This is a case where, so Ula would have died with my one severe hit, which would have healed Kastore up a bunch. And then I've got my AP to do other stuff, like maybe kill Cooper. So I felt it was worth doing, top of the turn. I've got my one good card. I've got as many cards as I'm ever going to have. And I just need one decent hit on this dog to kill it. Maybe 2. So if you can do something in one hit with your Master's AP, it feels a bit bad to spend one of that AP first setting up that big hit. And in this case, it's absolutely what I should have done. I believe I'm correct in saying Ula's willpower is pretty dog poo. So if I use Dominate first, I don't have to hit a trigger. It'd be nice to hit the Crow trigger to get some extra healing pulsed out. And I do have Crows, but really I just want to put Staggered on it. Staggered then reduces his movement down from 6 to 4, and I'm much more likely to hit my big attack with enough positive flips to put myself on a straight to be able to potentially do that big damage, big healy hit. So I absolutely should have done Dominate into Devour, as I'd been trying to sort of set up all game, and instead I didn't and just missed every day. So I then moved Marathine, put another scheme marker down, and then the dog Ula pisses all of my scheme markers off the board. So really this should have been where this activation should have been where I declared Ensnare, because Ula was surrounded by scheme markers he activated before anything happens, though that scheme scores, but I didn't think he was a valid target, so I didn't declare it. So in punishment for myself for that, I'm not going to give myself a point for this and use it as a lesson to help me remember how this scheme works. So Kastore went and did nothing, and now the dog has just removed all my scheme markers. All that AP just gone for a 0 action or whatever that is. Ula is absolutely phenomenal. And I think is basically the #1 priority target, given how much he can do, how much he does for the crew, and given how hard Model 9 and Cooper should be to actually bump off. Ula is target #1. I don't think he does much else with his activation though. I don't know that he hit Kastore. Something I didn't mention in the previous turn was that the Apex team managed to drop a ski marker. I can't remember who did it. I think it was Model 9, but I have noticed this, and I'm pretty sure this is to try to score the last point from deliver a message. And I'm not really worried about this one at the moment, but I've sort of earmarked Marathon to go deal with any more that find themselves dropped near Kastore. So anyway, Marathon goes, moves to position to Blade Rush through Cooper and Ula. Cooper was on 1 health left after the beatings that he'd been taking, and so died from the Blade Rush. He had no Soul Stones left. Not sure why the Marathon is here in this picture. I'm pretty sure I charged through and then put attacks on the dog. Can't tell you why he's in that position, but the significant part of this activation was killing Cooper with Blade Rush. The Crypsis Core dude activates, and I remove my markers to try to score it in snare. Obviously, no point was scored, and he tries to kill this tricksome Nephilim, black jokering his damage flip. Ugh, you gotta feel my opponent's pain. But he does manage to kill it with the follow-up shot, bringing down my Nephilim, which is a shame, but I feel he's done his job. Then Barbarous goes, he knocks aside Model 9 to go play on the water wheel, pushes over to Ula, and finishes Ula with his subsequent attacks. And we end the turn like this. Vasilisa drops another scheme marker and is now running off for the backfield. I could use both her AP to just equalise this marker. I wouldn't score off it, so I figure trying to score my remaining points for my schemes is the better use of her AP. So she's off to do that. Atherak again tries to kill off this pesky little runaway and cannot do it. I just can't get rid of this thing. I used to play Collodi back in M2E, and I can thoroughly appreciate how annoying having a zero-cost totem model gumming up your dudes is. I really very much like to be doing other things with Atherak's AP, but it's not happening. So at the end of the turn, no one scores for the strategy again, and no one scores for any schemes. Turn 5, there's my hand. Big money. I believe Apex might have actually got to go first this turn, and I can't remember what they did with it. Maybe the Crypsis Core shot at Barbarous, I just can't remember. In any case, what seems to have happened here is that during the end phase of last turn, Barbarous took 2 damage to drop a scheme marker for Kastore's preparations. Model 9 had carefully placed himself outside of 1 inch. And what do we do? Looks like Cascadore's gone. We've moved Marathon to drop another scheme marker. And I have used one of my Master's AP to dominate this runaway into running through the hazardous terrain and dying. Absolutely worth it in my opinion. That thing was so annoying. And I used to play Collodi in M2E. And I can fully appreciate now how annoying it is to have a totem running around gumming up your important models. So we wrap this turn up pretty quickly. There's not really a whole lot to say about this. Essentially, Model 9 went and charged through, did some damage to Barbarous. Did he kill Atherak? I don't remember him killing Atherak. Oh no, Atherak's over here. Phew! So yeah, just basically charged through, did some damage to Barbarous, basically made sure to get a scheme marker down over here. Which Marathon then activated and removed. Vasilisa further up and dropped another scheme marker, and that's basically where we ended things. I think I was just running off over here for shits and giggles with Atherak. So yeah, so at the end of the turn, neither team scores any points for the strategy again. All my models are heavily damaged apart from Vasilisa, who's looking pretty, so my opponent Apex score 1 point, make them bleed. I score a point for protected territory, and I score a final point with my scheme markers around Model 9, who I was worried might try to kill himself on this pit trap, and was pretty studious not to hurt otherwise, so I score a point for Ensnare, finally making this game a 5-4 win to the Neverborn. Really fun game, really enjoyed this. My opponent, this was the first time I'd met him, super nice guy, really friendly. And I can imagine playing Cooper, it is not the easiest thing to face a team, half of which are hiding behind a force field wall, the other half are stealthed or have armor 2 and can heal themselves. And he had some pretty bad luck on some important flips. So hats off to him for persevering through that like a champ. And whilst I'm still pretty new to M3E, my opponent has only just picked it up as well, and I don't believe he has much, if anything, of a skirmish game background. So I was genuinely impressed by his knowledge of his team and ability to handle Malifaux's pretty substantial mental stack. And you can see by the score, this was actually a pretty close game. So hats off to him, and I hope we get to play some more. So I guess in summary, I really like my crew into Cooper 1. It played on his weaknesses exactly how I expected it to. I missed the Urn Bearer, but this game has shown me that it's not impossible to play without it. I just need to be really careful and really make sure I'm able to hit a max damage Devour. Otherwise it is hard to keep the health up, but it's doable, right? So that gives me a bit of flexibility in future, where if it's just too awkward to fit her in, the crew can still work without the Urn Bearer. And I continue to sort of think I understand Kastore 1. At least nothing I've seen dissuades me from what I wrote on the forum. Like, I don't see any evidence of glaring oversights, I guess. I just certainly lack the skill to play him effectively in terms of positioning, in terms of how to sequence his attacks, how to save resources to ensure that I am able to hit them when I need them. So yeah, I think I understand him. I think I'm not good enough to play him to his potential just yet. I'm honestly not sure he's really that good, or really does anything you couldn't do with Kastore Fervent, other than put out a few more interact AP, and the way he uses Marathene is different. And that's probably the crux of when you take Awakened over Fervent, because Awakened gives you more flexibility in how you can position Marathene, allows Marathene to do much more damage if you can keep Kastore healthy and keep pinging him for heals, and gets you that extra scheme marker drop in a more controllable place. So yeah, into scenarios where the enemy team is like heavily incentivized to cluster up, where there's also going to be benefit to having scheme markers in that mix. I think Kastore 1 can be relevant. If there's also like a decent amount of interacts in that, I think that's sort of the territory where Kastore 1 starts to maybe become more of a choice over Kastore 2. And interestingly, actually, so Cooper is not the easiest for, I think, Kastore Fervent to deal with, because Cooper himself can't be moved because of Larfoth, which means Fervent can't just kidnap him, which we really want to do. And the rest of Cooper's crew have really good reposition abilities. I think Artemis can pull a teleport a model to him. Agent 9 or Model 9, whatever it's called, could just run away, charge out of combat. It's not super easy for Fervent to do his little kidnap trick. So maybe Awakened isn't the worst shout into Cooper, actually. Who knows? Certainly need to get more games in. Loving Malifaux. Just so glad to be back playing it again. And I will leave it there until the next one. Take care.